I still can't believe that someone actually commented and said that they recognized me. Like, there's literal sweat dripping down my face. Oh my god. Oh my
You're
god.
an inspiration to people.
Hey guys, we are Unconventional Norns. We share stories of people who have found success or are on the path of finding success in their own unconventional ways. At Oxford, we've seen this common culture to have to get perfect grades, to always compare ourselves to others and needing to get to the top college to be success. And we really want to change this culture to see that there are many different ways to find success.
Right. So today here we have with us Christine Nguyen. So Christine, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure. So my name's Christine Nguyen. I am a rising junior at the University of Southern California. I am studying political science and business law. A few things that I'm involved in at my school. One is that I'm involved in a sorority. Second is that I also have an on-campus job. I work as a public relations manager for Dr. Professor Viet Thanh Nguyen. And also I was previously involved in undergraduate student government. But I know many of you are probably in high school still maybe, so I can share a little bit about that as well. So I went to high school at Mater Dei, it's in Santa Ana. And in high school, I played girls basketball. I was a ministry leader, so I led a lot of retreats. I also was a special games volunteer, but the one thing that I was really involved in a lot was ASB, and I eventually ran for ASB president my senior year, and I am the first Asian American student body president at Mater Dei. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
Okay, so the first question will be, can you walk us through your experience running for USC's president undergraduate student, USC undergraduate student president, or for,
Yes, of course. So actually this experience is honestly something that is pretty recent. The campaign ended in February of 2020. So it's only been a few months since the campaign has ended. I decided to run for president December 2019. And something that was really interesting is that many people take months or years or at least a month in deciding to run for a political office. For me, I acted pretty impulsively by deciding to run for office a few days before the application was due. This was because yeah, I know. Let me explain. So this was because I had found out who was running for office, and I had worked with these candidates previously in the past, and I knew in my heart and in my gut that USG, the organization, USG stands for Undergraduate Student Government, it deserved someone who was able to meet people halfway or meet people where they were with the heart and the intention of service and not try to operate the organization as if it was an entire business transaction. And so that's why I decided to run. It was a very gutsy move, but I don't regret it at all. And I couldn't have done it without the people that were involved in my campaign. So fast forward, we turned in all the applications with a bunch of help. I put together a team. I had a campaign manager, I had my vice president, I had an assistant campaign manager, a director of media, director of graphics and video, and a social media manager. So that was my team. And we kind of branded, we did brand ourselves as the not anti-establishment candidates, but candidates who were willing to collaborate and foster community within and outside of the organization. Another problem that we noticed, my vice president and I, is that there is really no accountability mechanism or transparency mechanism enforced inside undergraduate student government. And this is so crucial because USG's annual budget is a $2.4 million budget. And this comes out of the pockets of our students, our undergraduate students. And the role of the student government is to represent and to empower all 20,000 undergrad students. So if there's no accountability enforcement, there's obviously a problem there. And so that was kind of the campaign and the platform that my team ran on. And I want to speak a little bit about, because when I shared to you my experience about running, I talked about what was really difficult for me in this campaign. So for me, because I chose to brand myself as the accountability enforcer, or like meeting people halfway, it comes with a level of vulnerability and emotional openness. And so something that I vowed to myself throughout this entire campaign was that I was going to be as vulnerable and as emotionally open as possible, because I wanted people to see me for who I was, and to see that I had genuine intentions of helping people. And this is really hard, and it was really hard for me, because every day honestly felt like I was literally a walking target. When you put up a front that you're strong and you've got it all together, then it's harder for people to pick at you. But when you come to people as this vulnerable person, as this underdog candidate, there's a lot of beef that people can pick with you. And so I didn't know if people liked me, if they gossiped about me, if they like hated my guts. I never knew. And it was hard, because when I was critiqued and when there were attacks coming my way, it was really personal, because I presented myself in a personal way. So that being said, what a campaign looks like, because it's like, whoa, you're running for office. What does that even look like? So for 3 months, it was a lot of endorsement meetings, speaking events, debate prep, planning for the next event, campaigning, like physical campaigning on our school's like campus. It was answering a lot of emails, logistical, administrative stuff. So that was for 3 months. And then on top of that, I still had school. Guys, I was still in class. Yes. So it was hard. It was really hard. And then the results of the campaign came out in February, and I ended up losing the campaign. And that was honestly one of the biggest, I say, technical failures of my life. When I say technical failure, I say that because I lost on paper, but like in my heart, the entire experience is by no means a failure at all, because I am a different person now because of that entire campaign. And I cannot say that I regret or wouldn't have done that experience, even though it was hard. So the campaign loss and the failure, it was hard for me personally, because again, I presented myself as in the most vulnerable and open way possible. And so when I lost, it almost felt as if people didn't see me for who I was, and people didn't believe me for what I wanted to stand for. And so that was really hard. And it was also really hard because this kind of failure was a public failure. So there was no way for me to hide in my room and to just, turn off the lights and escape the world for a few months. Like, I could not do that. I had to go on with my life and have a smile on my face, and I had to operate as if I was doing okay, despite the fact that I didn't know if people were talking about me, if people were like commenting about my failure or my loss, because everything was on display. And so that was really, really, really hard for me. But despite all of that and all of the hardships of the campaign, we're now maybe like 6 months out. I have done a lot of reflecting on my experience, and I've grown so much from the entire campaign. And I said earlier, I really don't regret it at all. I really don't.
That process of running, that sounds so much more difficult from like ASB in high school. It's like such a different environment also.
Full 9 to 5 thing. Like anytime you're not in class, you're basically working on your campaign.
Honestly, it was even more than 9 to 5. Like some nights so I would finish class maybe at say 3. I'd have meetings until 8. And then that night, my team and I would get together to prep for the next day. So some days we'd go until 1 or 2 a.m. Sometimes I'd have to wake up at 6 a.m. for a shoot, an interview. It was a lot. It was really a lot, really a lot.
Like a lifestyle at that point.
Yeah.
I have a question about the campaign. So during the 3 months where you were constantly under the stress of having to run your campaign, be a student at the same time, did you ever feel like you like doubted yourself, or
Mhm.
there was like something inside you that was telling you to quit? And like, if that was there, like, how did you overcome those doubts and like that mentality?
Mm-hmm. Yash, that's honestly such a great question, because I kid you not when I tell you I doubted myself every single day, because I knew my own self-worth, but it was really hard to try to prove it to others. And it was really hard to try to prove it to others when there were other candidates who were trying to prove the same thing or prove that they were better than you. And so every day was a challenge, and I doubted myself every single day. I never knew if something that I really struggled with was that I never knew if I was making the right decision. I never knew if what I was doing was the correct answer. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, now when I look back at it, there really is no correct answer on how to operate a 20,000 undergraduate student political campaign. Like there's no formula or strategy, and something that really, like I couldn't have gone through it without my team and without the people around me. Because when external forces are coming into you and attacking you for who you are, your strongest support is going to be the people around you who know you for who you are and who are going to be there to support you and reinforce you. And that was something that was so important to me.
When you have all these like pressures and like people talking bad about you, negative comments about you, how do you restrain yourself from like clapping back, or like how do you keep yourself from getting jaded and just saying like, no, I'm not gonna listen to them, I'm just gonna like block out all the noise?
That's a great question, Ethan. So honestly, a few different things. One, I've had to learn how to block out the noise since I was young, because I experienced a lot of different negativity in my life, or different negative comments, since I was young. So I've been trying to train myself since maybe like the beginning of high school on how to compartmentalize. So one of my favorite Supreme Court, because I want to be a lawyer, one of my favorite Supreme Court justices is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And as a woman in the field of law, there are not many. And during her time, there were even less. And so a lesson that I learned from her is that you really have to understand how to remove your emotions from your reality. And once you do so, it makes it a lot easier for you to handle difficult situations. A lesson that reminds me of this, or an experience that reminds me of this, is when I played basketball in high school. So I went to Mater Dei, and if you know Mater Dei, it is an incredibly athletically oriented high school. Like Oxford is like known for your smarts and your academics. At Mater Dei, it was sports. Like that was it. And so my coach would always get mad at me and always yell at me because I would always mess up. Like I get really nervous, and so I always mess up. And he would always yell at me. And in the beginning, I would always like take it out on myself, and I would sob myself to sleep, and I would be super upset. But I had my best friend at the time. She was the best player on the team. She was the MVP. She would always remind me, Christine, listen to the tone, listen to the message, not the tone. So listen to what he has to say, but don't take into consideration the fact that he's yelling at you. So that's a really important lesson that has helped me as I went through this campaign as well. Yeah.
Hearing just like a slight anger tone from my parents, that what gets me annoyed. And like you going through that with like whether it's your coach or even I don't know, like this like campaign, that's like I give you so much credit for like I don't get how you do that. That like it takes so much like mental strength.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's so crazy.
But okay, but honestly, it comes with practice. It really
Mhm.
comes with practice. Like whenever you feel that sense of anger or like that emotion bubbling up inside you, you have to take a moment to breathe, relax, and try to separate your emotions from your like the situation at hand. The more you practice it, the better you'll get at it. But honestly, I was the same way too, where the slightest, just if anyone said anything to attack me, I'd be like, no, you're so wrong. I hate you. Don't talk to me. You know, so I so get you. But yeah.
During your campaign, I don't know if you remember, but what was like the worst comment that you've heard, like directed towards you or like heard like rumored around you? Like what was the worst, you think?
There was, I don't remember a specific comment that was said to me, because a lot of times, a lot of things are said behind closed doors. But one experience that was like, it almost broke me, and it was literally day one, was when, so I know in my heart that I'm a person of integrity. When I do things, I do them with truthfulness and authenticity. And so when you run in this campaign, there are a bunch of rules that you have to follow. And when you don't follow the rules, then someone can write a complaint, and then there's like a hearing and a trial, and then like consequences and like ramifications. And so there are like a bunch of different rules. And so on the first day of the campaign launch, backtrack a little bit. So the campaign launched on, say, like Monday, January 20th, right? So prior to January 20th, you could not talk about the campaign with anyone. It had to be this outside of your team. It had to be top secret. And if you did talk about it with people, if people did find out, then it was a violation of the code. So on the first day of the campaign launch, say January 20th, right? All of us, all the different tickets, we all launched our campaigns at exactly on the dot 7 p.m. And then we had a meeting where we had to go and meet all the candidates. So I had to go and face all of my opponents in a room, because the people wanted us to go over the rules and stuff. And so I met them all. They were all very congenial to my face. They were all very kind and like, oh my gosh, Christine, like, I am so proud of you for running. Like, if I could run against anyone, I'm so happy that it's you. That kind of thing, like very, very kind. And I was like, oh, wow, nice. And then I went back home, and I can't remember specifically if it was that same day or a few days later, I got an email from the elections committee saying that I had violated code. And what was really hurtful was that all three of the candidates filed a joint statement against me and my team. And think about it, in terms of standing, my running mate Miles is not involved in USG. I'm the youngest one. Like, all of the other people running, they were all juniors. I was a sophomore at the time. They all had higher positions, either as a senator or on the executive cabinet. I was an assistant. And the fact that they all three of them signed a joint statement against me, it was one of the most brutal things. Like, I was so upset that they wanted to take it away from me when I hadn't even begun. And that was the worst thing.
So
And that was day one, right?
Yeah, that was literally like day one. Like, we hadn't even started yet.
Man, if I was in your shoes, I would have just quit by then. I would not have the mental capacity to like go through that. Like, that's so crazy.
You gotta fight. You really gotta fight. Like, I had been preparing for this, and I believed so strongly in what I wanted to accomplish that I was just so upset that they didn't even give me a chance to begin, and they wanted to take it away from me. You know, like, that was the worst.
Did they genuinely not like you, or did they do it for like out of strategy? They were just like, oh, we got to take her down because she's the opponent.
It could honestly be both. I never asked them their intentions because I really didn't have the time of day to do so. But it could have been both. It could have been a political strategy on their end. They may not like me, or they may disagree entirely with what I have said. I really don't know the answer to that one, but maybe
I also feel like them filing a joint complaint shows how they see you as like a real opponent and someone that like might take it away from them, and they feel like the need to like have to like go behind your back and file a complaint and do all this stuff. So it kind of like reinforces that like you're on the right path, and like you're disrupting the giants.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A sign of respect.
You're disrupting the giants. I like how you said that. But honestly, that when I was like sobbing my eyes out, like, oh my God, like, they're gonna take this campaign away from me, and I haven't even started. Like, when I was doing that, that's honestly pretty much what all of my friends were telling me. Like, Christine, you can't back down. Like, they're gonna think they think you're weak. You're not weak. Like, pull yourself together. But yeah, like, I totally agree with what you said.
You should have TP'd the room or something. You should have like done something like terrible.
You can't
clap
just
back.
like,
yeah, you should have just clapped back on that.
Dude,
Just screw the campaign. Just do it.
So my when I think about it, it's like, okay, they're gonna play dirty and they're gonna use these back doors. What I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna rise above, and I'm going to prove that I'm going to maintain my own character and prove that I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it better. And so it was pretty interesting though, because throughout the rest of the campaign for 3 months, all of the 3 other candidates got into really heated fights with one another, and like there was a lot of cattiness and dirty campaign playing involved. And something that I really pride myself in my team is on the fact that we played a very, very clean game. I take so much pride in how we approached the situation and how much class we had and how we vowed to ourselves that we would not stoop to levels beneath us, but rather we would prove to people that we're here, but we're going to do it right. We're going to play the game right. So yeah.
Going back to like when the campaign results came out, and of course, like unfortunately you lost, how did you deal with this heartbreak?
And to add on, sorry to interrupt. To add on to the question, how were you able to see like the positives that came out of it? Because I was like extremely surprised when you said that you had no regrets coming out of the campaign, even though you lost. So can you talk about that too? Sorry.
Yeah, no, of course. I remember this specifically because when I wrote my draft up to you, I remembered in my head, like, oh my gosh, some of my friends have gone through some really brutal heartbreaks, like with boyfriends and stuff. And for me, the worst thing that I've ever experienced in my life was a heartbreak from losing a political campaign. And so I think, the best thing for me that I did was allow myself that moment to heal and to genuinely reflect. I think a lot of times when people go through difficult experiences that can leave some trauma, the tendency is to run away and to hide from those emotions and those feelings. The more you try to embrace it, recognize it, acknowledge it, put a name on it, the easier it will become for you to accept the situation as it is and move on. So for me, it was hard. Honestly, it was really hard. There were a lot of tears, and there were a lot of moments where I was even too afraid to go outside. I was too afraid to be in groups of people out of fear of like judgment and stuff. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the people around you who love and care about you are your biggest source of strength during this time. And so when you yourself aren't feeling at your best, it is so important to find or rely on the people around you who will help lift you. I have always struggled with this growing up, where when I go through something difficult in my life, and I think this may be a tendency among Asian American youth, is that when I would go through a difficult situation or some sort of adversity, instead of seeking out other people and relying on help, I would internalize situations and I would be like, no, Christine, like you're supposed to be strong. Like if you're not strong enough to handle this, like, are you even strong at all? And that kind of mentality is very, very destructive. And so I'm really grateful that I made this conscious decision to rely on other people outside of myself, because had I internalized everything and criticized myself, it would have been so destructive on my character, on my mental health, and just on my life as a whole. And then, Yash, remind me what your question was again?
So how were you able to find like the good things that came out of your campaign, even though like in the end you didn't win? Like how were you able to find the positives?
I think you really have to be honest with yourself. Before you can find the positive and the good in situations, you have to be honest with yourself on where it went wrong, what you did wrong, and what constituted a failure. If, like I said earlier, if I didn't recognize the mistakes or the trauma or the flaws or the heartbreak in the ugly mess that it was, then it would have been really hard for me to identify the positives. You need to make amends with your past and the difficulties and the trauma of your past before you can move forward with that kind of positive mentality. So that was in my situation.
All right, so kind of switching topics a little bit.
Sure.
So I think one of the biggest things I loved from like your response from our screening questions was, so like this line that you wrote, like, success is so incredibly personal, and if you don't define success for yourself, then whatever you achieve will not feel like success. And I think like one of the biggest things I loved about that was the self-awareness part of it, because I feel like that's something that we all forget. We all have this time when we want to listen to like gurus and people who have already made it to success and really want to share their advice, but some of the times is very general, and some of the times it doesn't really apply to us in every situation. But it's our responsibility to be self-aware on whether this is something that I should, I guess, follow and like trust in this. I don't know if that makes sense, like trust in this situation or not.
Yeah.
And I think in general, like a question that I have for you is, like, why do you think it is so important to be self-aware?
Yeah, oh, I totally agree with what you said, and I think it's so cool how you pointed out that line, because I pulled that statement from my own personal experiences, and how the perception of success really wasn't genuine success until I made it what I wanted it to be. Self-awareness it's important, because if you're not self-aware of your genuine intentions and your genuine purpose towards success, then whatever you end up achieving down the line will not feel like success at all. And I'll speak to this from my own personal experience. So growing up in a Vietnamese American household, I, for the longest time, resented my identity. So that's me and my lack of self-awareness. I resented how I always was in tutor. I always had Saturday school, Sunday school. I could never just go hang out with my friends. I always resented that part of my identity. And so, but at the same time though, that part of my identity was so influential on the decisions that I made. Because even though I denied that part of who I was, it still pushed me to take risks, to challenge myself, and to be very ambitious. So in high school, during that time when I really just denied my Vietnamese identity. When I became the first Asian American student body president, and even when I got accepted into USC, it didn't feel like success to me at all. And like, now that I'm telling you these stories, you're like, oh my gosh, Christine, like, are you like, what? Like, you succeeded in that? Like, what do you mean that didn't feel like success to you? And honestly, because I was so focused on the kind of perfect success where it needed to be, no, I have to get into USC with a full scholarship. No, I have to be like this type of scholar when I go to USC. Or no, I won a campaign, but it was only against one other person. Like that type of mentality. And it was because I was so unaware, and I denied parts of myself for the longest time. So when I got to college and I started to reflect more on who I was, why I was the way that I was, and what parts made up my identity, whether it's Western influences or Asian influences, it became a lot easier for me to identify what kind of success I wanted for myself and why I wanted to pursue that. And when you come to these conclusions about what success is personally for you, it makes success so much easier to pursue because you're excited about it and you're passionate about it. And so the failures feel less heavy and the joyous moments feel all the more joyful, because this goal that you're striving towards is so personal to your identity and who you are. And that really comes with becoming self-aware and really identifying, okay, I want to be successful, but why? I want to have this job, but why? What influences in my life right now are forcing me or like making me pursue something specific? What is it? Who is it that I am? And why is it I am this way? Things like that.
For Oxford, we have this really big thing of comparing ourselves to like other people. And I know that like 100% I can say that I went through that as well. Do you think that like with that, I guess, degree of like learning self-awareness and learning more about your identity, it helps you stop comparing yourself to others?
I think so. I really agree so, because I think when you personalize success and cater it to your own personal ambitions, it's not going to look like the kid next to you. It's not like I'm gonna be like, okay, Yash, do you want to be a lawyer who lives in New York City and be an independent boss woman? Probably not. Probably not. So when you personalize it, it makes it you become kind of so honed in on your own ambitions that everything else that people are going on, that are going on in other people's lives, it's just noise, and that's their own path. But you recognize, okay, this is my own path and I'm going to pursue this. And so then you really don't compare yourself anymore. But honestly, with the caveat that it's easier said than done.
And do you have any like advice or like a plan or a strategy for someone that's trying to develop that self-awareness?
You really have to consciously be self-introspective. So you really have to be, as a political science student, one of the very first classes that I took was a class on political ideology. And ideology is pretty much very interesting because it defines the way a person thinks based on their surrounding environments and their influence in surrounding environments. It's nasty though, because the surrounding environments and the things that affect you are unnoticed, and you can't tell that they are the things that are affecting you. And so I think that this really affects students and people in the same way, where we're so focused on these broad general ideas of success and the ideologies that have influenced us and pushed us to believe this way, that it's really hard to separate ourselves out of that mentality in order to figure out what we want for ourselves. So I would say that, something that you really have to do is you really have to be conscious, and you really have to be very, not forceful. I wouldn't say forceful is the word, but very, what's the word where like you have to be very, like you can't just half-ass things and be like, oh yeah, sure, like yeah, that's why I want to. You have to be very specific and very determined, and also very like purposeful with your own self-awareness and your analysis of yourself. And this activity may seem very stupid. It may sound super stupid, but when I was going through a really hard time in trying to identify my own passions and visions for myself, what I would do was I would lock myself in my room, I would pull out my journal, and I would start writing. And writing has always been a tool that has been super helpful in helping me reflect on who I am and who I want to be. So if you need something tangible like that, start there. I think also exposing yourself to experiences that are very similar to you. So for me, the more I try to learn from Vietnamese groups and like groups online about different people's experiences, the more I recognize similarities and differences. Like, oh yeah, like I grew up that same way, or I have that same kind of characteristic. So try to surround yourself with people and experiences that help you identify your own behaviors and characteristics.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer, and it's something that the three of us can apply, and everyone that's watching can also like apply and develop their own self-awareness.
I was wondering, what do you think people should do then if their definition of success does not align with their parents' definition of success?
That's a great one. So my strategy with my parents, because I have Asian parents too, my strategy is that I get to do what I want when I play the game right. So what I mean by this, my parents want me to be at the top of my class. They want me to be extremely successful, get into a really good college, have a career set out, and whatever. Okay, fine. So what I did is that I satisfied the things that they wanted to a certain degree. So getting really good grades, sure, I did that. Getting into a good college, sure, I did that. And then when it came to things that I wanted to do, I would present it to them strategically. So I say, okay, Mom and Dad, I have done A, B, and C. So can I do this now? Can I do this now? Or more specifically, on a more superficial scale, where it's like, can I go on a weekend vacation with my friends? I just added a business law minor. I just got a 4.0. Like, try to back yourself up and and elevate yourself and try to also present yourself in a way where you know what you're talking about, so that when you are asked the hard questions by your parents, you know what to say. And it's hard. It's really, 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 really hard for sure. But I think it's somewhere to start. And something that I've always recognized within our generation is that there's a communication gap between our elders and the young people, where the elders expect the young people to act and behave in a certain way, and the young people have different ideas of their own, but they can't really communicate it because there's like a gap of misunderstanding. And so something that is really helpful, has been helpful for me, is just having honest and real conversations, but also like having confidence in your own capabilities in your own direction. It's easier said than done, but if you have more specific cases of things in general, then I would be more than happy to answer.
All right, so kind of to switch the topics real quick, I wanted to talk about the topic of adversity, because I think that your story, like one of the biggest parts of your story is like almost like, for example, your like ASB campaign, whether it's high school, whether it's USC, they're both like, you were both the person who wasn't supposed to win, whether it was like modern day. You're the first Asian American ASB president. Can you kind of walk us through any other experiences of adversity that you faced?
Yeah, at USC, in my experience, I have a very diverse group of friends and peers, and so I don't really experience a lot of outright discrimination in my life at USC so far. There have been instances, though, where I recognize the lack of representation, though. However, for example, the professor that I work for is one of the few Vietnamese American staff faculty members at USC, like one of the few. And before working for him, I had never seen anyone with the same last name as me in the academic field or working at USC or things like that. So yeah, there's lack of representation for sure. But to speak on that, it further inspires me to take power of my own identity and to take those spaces to be that voice of representation, so that I can amplify other voices and include them into the fold. So it comes with that kind of responsibility as well. But growing up, though, in high school, I think it was harder for me to recognize the lack of diversity and representation when I myself denied my own identity. But there were instances that were pretty, now that I have recognized my identity, those instances of discrimination in high school are pretty formative in the career that I am pursuing, and why I choose to continue to take risks and take leadership positions. So if you want me to share, I can share some experiences of discrimination in high school. There was one where I was a sophomore, and I was late to school, and I was just learning how to drive. I know Trung was talking about that earlier, about driving. But I was late to school, and I was just learning how to drive. And so I made the mistake of parking the car wrong in front of my school's intersection. And so it blocked the cars behind me, and they all got super upset because like class was about to start and all these different things. And so all of these people got super upset at me, and my dad ended up taking the car to go to work. And so I was waiting at the stoplight to go into school. And someone, I'm pretty sure that they're not like a parent of a modern day student, I'm pretty sure. But I was standing there at the curb at the intersection, and someone turned the curb, they rolled down their window and yelled at me, "Go back to where you came from." And that statement and that line has been something that I still think about pretty often. Not that it hurts me in any way, but as a motivation for me to own the spaces where I am. So that was one really specific situation. There have also always been sexist situations too, where I played basketball in high school, and when you're a 5'2" Asian girl, there aren't many expectations for you to perform well when you play basketball. And so on top of that, in high school, I made YouTube videos to help the universe and to help the world. And I made YouTube videos about teaching girls how to like properly shoot, or how to like proper defense, or like different types of drills, and how to be a better basketball player. And there aren't many female basketball player trainers on YouTube at the time. And so when I did post those videos, they got really popular, but so did the hate and the negative comments, where it's like, are you sure you can play? Like, maybe you shouldn't play because you're a girl. Are you sure that's the right shooting form? Like, all these different things because I was a girl playing basketball. Like, so yeah, those were the types of discrimination specific experiences that I had to go through growing up.
What's the name of your YouTube account? I want to watch.
It is like I'll send it later. Like it's so embarrassing. I still leave it up because like I still get comments from young girls that are like, oh my gosh, I was so nervous to play on a co-ed team, but these drills really helped me. Or I wasn't sure if I should play the sport, but this video made me feel more confident. So that's why I leave it up. But if I could take it down out of your embarrassment, I totally would.
And I think that there's someone that responded to our story, like someone that we all know, and they said that they've watched you on YouTube before, and they like recognized you from the flyer we posted. So like you really are making an impact from that.
I'm sweating.
I'm
Famous
looking at your
YouTuber.
account. You have like 10,000 subscribers. That's not a low number. That's
Oh,
like a
you
good
found
amount of
it. You found
subscribers.
her.
Yeah.
You found it. Yes, indeed. Okay, watch it on your spare time. If you watch it on live TV now, I am going to pass out. I will pass out.
Oh no, don't worry. So like me and my brother, we created little like Baki. Have you played Bakugan, Christine?
No, it sounds kind of familiar. What is it?
It's like the little like it's like the little, how do you explain? It's like a ball, and then you like throw
the
it at
metal.
something, and then like it pops up to something.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Actually, my brother, he created a YouTube channel called Baku Jake. Same kind of like yeah. So and okay, so there's this funny, extremely funny video where we were doing this like this parody of Jingle Bells, and we had this like, you know, there's like, so we have the gift wrapping rolls, but then it's like the insides, yeah. So
like the tube.
Yeah. So what we did was we did like a parody of Jingle Bells, and then he slapped me. And I was a little kid, and like you could see my reaction. Okay, you just need to look up Baki. I can't really
send me the link. Send me that link.
Yes, it is so funny. So don't worry about that. Like me and my brother, I think mine and my brother were pretty bad. So
Justin, you're like the fall of your reputation being slapped on national on the internet.
and all of my brother's friends saw it, so like they just started at me, like me and my brother.
It's okay, it's okay. Kudos to you, really, for sure. I still can't believe that someone actually commented and said that they recognized me. Like there's literal sweat dripping down my face. Oh my
You're an inspiration to people.
Oh,
wait.
That is nicely wording it. Generously wording it.
Were you on varsity for the basketball team?
I played frosh soft my first 2 years, and then I played JV. Senior year, I because if you've played all 4 years, then you would automatically end up on varsity. But I decided to quit because I ran for office, and I knew that I couldn't do both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you talked about like receiving hateful comments on YouTube. Did you receive hateful comments from within the team as well, or not so much?
Honestly, no, because my basketball team, I am so fortunate to have been so close with them, and they were all from different walks of life. So we've got people from all different ethnicities, nationalities, height, sizes, and I was so fortunate because they were all so supportive of whatever I did, and they were such a foundational reason in my political campaign in high school and why I won. It was because of their help. Like I would have my teammates who would, like I specifically remember on the day when the results were announced, all the candidates were sitting outside, like on the lunch tables, and it was me and my entire like 40-person team just hanging out waiting for like the results to come out. But yeah, like I couldn't have done things without them. Yeah.
Our last question for you is, could you give, and like if you were to give one piece of advice to our viewers, what would it be?
I think at your age, something that I would have wanted to heard myself is that I'm just gonna say it as it is. Just honestly, let things go. Like I myself too am included, and all of you are so young, and you have the rest of your life to take on responsibility, to take on leadership, to be the best in your workplace, the best in your college, all these different things. But you really only have this one time now to be a young person and to have no strings attached to experience all the benefits and all the joys that this life has to offer. And once it's gone, and even now as a college student, I'm realizing how much time is slipping away, and how much there's still so much that I want to do. And so, do well in your studies and work towards your goals, but honestly, let things go and really enjoy the time and the space with your family, your friends, because once it's gone, and you can't go back. So that's something that I wish I would have known myself. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on to this podcast. Thank you so much. I think for me, this was one of my favorite ones. So
I hope you're not just saying that, Justin.
No, seriously.
Flattery.
Seriously, trust me. And then I'll make sure to send you I'll send everyone the video of me getting slapped. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you guys.
Have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much.